For more on the holiday shopping season, we are joined in Toronto to speak with Waleed Ayoub. He is the Chief Product Officer at Rubikloud, a retail data analyst firm. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Has Black Friday become a little bit of a misnomer as many of the deals actually begin on November 1 and Wednesday at midnight?
Yeah, I think what's happening is, the competition that sort of emerged when Black Friday became a huge phenomenon, whereby, a vast majority of sales were driven on that day, bred innovation. Retailers started to do certain things like expose pricing, for example, early in the week, and then you can kind of come in the store and get that price to early adopters. So I think what's actually happening is that retailers know the significance of the day, capitalized on it, saturated their strategy, and now the smarter ones have found ways to sort of reduce a dependency on that just one day. So I think the day itself is not as important as it used to be, but there are days that sort of back-ended or sort of come first that allow them to still get the sales that they need.
So Waleed, is there any way to quantify where the best deals are, in the store or online?
That's a really difficult question because especially as sort of machine learning and AI techniques start to get used to potentially tailor the experience to personalize it to a customer, the question of where the best deal is largely sounding more like where's the best deal for me as an individual buyer as opposed to everybody. So online tends to be the easier sort of channel through which you can provide the best deal, but ultimately what ends up happening is the retailers that succeed are the ones that find a holistic strategy whereby the online component and the offline component are not sort of divisive channels whereby a consumer going from one to the other for a particular retailer is annoyed or upset by the experience.
Yeah, well, for some, this really has to be a sport. For me, for example, today I was looking at the same store online and calling the store, and I got two different prices. So you really have to read the fine print, don't you? 70% off the MSRP does not necessarily mean it's always going to be less expensive.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the struggle to get those sort of top sales in terms of driving your revenue for the year need to be buttressed against something like the effective margin so that you're not sort of giving away dollars to get dollars back in. But what we find, especially when we look at the data, I mean that's something questions that we grapple with on a regular basis, given the sort of the space that we play in, where we notice that people have very interesting behaviors whereby they will browse and do research online, and then over the next subsequent days go and transact in the store. So that holistic strategy is very important. And if you can't actually merge those two experiences for a customer, you end up with a very unsettling experience that could actually lose you sales. So that experience that you talk about is something that we see a lot, but then successful retailers have a really good way of making sure that that experience is a seamless one.
So what impact or percentage does Black Friday actually have on sales overall? How much do stores, brick and mortar stores, factor in this day?
That's a very interesting question, largely because it varies based on the sort of the vertical. I mean, some retailers will make upwards of, say, a quarter of their entire yearly sales between now and the end of the year, and keeping in mind that the three most important days throughout that year are the Saturday before Christmas, Cyber Monday, and Black Friday. So you're talking about a sizable single-digit number of their yearly number comes on this one day. The one thing that I would caution, obviously, when we work with retailers is you really shouldn't be sort of, relying so much on one specific day to drive, success over the course of a year. You really have to have a strategy in place that incorporates, equal parts technology, equal parts customer experience and service in order to sort of de-risk yourself from this one day potentially being flat. We hear a lot about the projections coming out from various analysts about what may happen on Black Friday, but if that's what you're sort of counting your luck and hoping that it happens, you might have a rude awakening when the week ends, and that's not something that we advise retailers put themselves in terms of a bad space,
How popular is Black Friday now in other countries, overseas?
You were mentioning earlier Europe and sort of Germany being a huge market for Amazon. Interestingly enough, Japan, the Aeon Group Rakuten, they've actually started to do Black Friday sales and have started to pick up as well over the last few years. So you're seeing that kind of adoption in earnest, I think, as a lagging effect in some of these smaller markets, or rather isolated markets versus North America. But what's really interesting is Singles Day, for example, the event in China, where $25 billion of revenue was generated over the course of 2 days. To put that into perspective, there's no more than 45 retailers globally that do $25 billion in revenue over the course of a whole year. So what I would actually expect is over the next year or two that Singles Day effect starts to have an impact in North America, Europe, and maybe starts to steal some of that sheen away from Black Friday and what it used to do here.